College football weekend preview. We do it every week. We do it every Friday here at the show. Got some good games. Notre Dame, Pitt, Oklahoma, Alabama, Iowa, USC. We'll touch on Florida, Ole Miss, and the game of the weekend, of course, Texas and Georgia. Let's start with the noon game. That is Notre Dame and Pitt. It is at Pitt. Notre Dame, 12.5-point favorites in this game. It's a huge game for the college football playoff, right? You know, I said very early in the year, even after Notre Dame dropped those two games early, I was, hey, I think Notre Dame's a good team. I think they're going to win out. I think they're going to make the college football playoff. I still believe that, but this is going to be a challenge for them, and really because of this matchup, and that is the run defense of Pitt. You know, Pitt is ranked 22, but not a ton of people have been talking about Pitt here at this point, but they're the number one run defense in the country as it relates to yards per carry allowed, and that's a huge stat. There in this game, because obviously Notre Dame is built on, we got Jeremiah Love, we got Jadarian Price, we're going to run the football, and that's going to be kind of our identity as a team. I don't know if they're going to necessarily have a ton of success doing that here in this game. A lot's going to be asked of C.J. Carr. Obviously, he's a first-year starter. He's a young guy, and it's kind of, there's been some ups, there have been some downs for C.J. Carr, and I think next year you're really going to see him take a big-time step for Notre Dame, and I think he'll probably be viewed as one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Not at that level yet, and you question, what version of C.J. Carr you're going to get. Pitt made a switch a couple of weeks ago to a freshman quarterback, and he's come in and he's lit it up, and he's been throwing the ball all over the field, and he's done a really nice job. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles this type of game, and this is the biggest game of his life. He's a freshman, he's playing Notre Dame at home, and that's an opportunity for him to really make his mark, and for this to be a good game. I think it's going to be a close game. I think Pitt's going to hang in there. Pat Narduzzi made headlines this week where he was like, I don't understand this at all. I don't know the exact quote off my head, but he basically was like, yeah, we could lose by 100 in this game. I'm worried about how we do in our conference. And what are you talking about? You're playing Notre Dame, a perennial program. Are you butthurt maybe that they're not in a conference? Maybe that's part of it. I don't know. Are you trying to make a point about that? I don't know. But you're playing a top 10 team in the country, and this is a huge opportunity for your team to go out there and win. And you're going to basically be like, it's whatever. I'm worried about the conference. Like, he literally said this. Go look it up. It's insane. So I don't know what he's doing. I've always respected him. He's done a nice job. I don't know if he had a mental lapse there in the press conference, or if he meant it to come out a different way. But I was like, dude, what in the world are you saying? It's a great opportunity for your football team against good competition to really see where you're at and pick up a big-time win. You're a ranked team. It's not like you're a winless team, right? You're a ranked team. You should be a solid football team, and you have a top 10 team in Notre Dame coming in. This would be a huge win for your program, something that's talked about for years if you pull off this win. And I don't know what in the world he was thinking, but we'll see. Game's at noon. It's the best noon game. Michigan Northwestern also at noon. I believe that's at Wrigley, by the way, which I've got mixed emotions on that, why exactly they do that. But, that'll be a good game. Notre Dame and Pitt. Notre Dame 12.5-point favorites. Not touching it for best bets of the weekend, but I would guess Notre Dame wins, but Pitt covers is kind of what my gut says here at this point. Oklahoma and Alabama. The gauntlet continues for the Crimson Tide. They continue to win football games, and Ty Simpson continues to be a great quarterback. I think the past couple haven't been his best. You've seen him miss some throws in these games, and I think that's why you saw, obviously, South Carolina hung around for a while in that game, and a lot of people would say they should have won that game, and then you really weren't able to blow out or pull away, I should say, from LSU like you had an opportunity to do in that game because you missed some throws there in the second half. Only 5.5-point spread, by the way, which some people might be surprised by that. I wouldn't say I am, because this is a tough matchup for the Alabama Crimson Tide, despite the fact this game is at home. Obviously, it was at Norman last year, and that's the worst game I've ever seen Alabama play in my entire life, is how they played on the road against Oklahoma last year with Jalen Milroe. But obviously, they have an actual quarterback this year, which will be helpful. But, the OU offense, we talked about this a lot here at the show. They started off, and you're like, oh, Oklahoma, they might have something here. In the first couple of weeks, you started to throw the word Heisman out with John Mateer, their quarterback, who was the biggest get in the portal out of Washington State. You brought him here at Oklahoma, and he was off to a terrific start. But then he had the hand injury, right? Curtis Rourke had the same hand injury for Indiana last year. had the surgery, comes back, not the same. You're seeing that here with Mateer and this Oklahoma team. He kind of felt like he rushed back for Red River, which credit to him. I wouldn't want to miss that game either. Showed his toughness, but he had a horrible game there against Texas, and kind of the reason they lost that game, to be completely honest with you. And so the offense really has been sputtering, to say the least, for Oklahoma. So if Alabama is able to put up a bunch of points in this game, they'll win, no problem. But Oklahoma can get after you from a pass rush perspective, and they can get after the quarterback. And I think it's interesting because for whatever reason, people have not fully gotten on board with Ty Simpson yet, and I don't know why. And the people that sit there and say Mendoza is better than Ty Simpson, I don't get that at all. You want to say Julian Sainz better than him? Fine. But you want to say Fernando Mendoza is better than Ty Simpson? That's an incorrect statement. And, people were sitting there talking about this game saying, they're going to get after Ty Simpson. He's not going to be able to handle it. That's fine. He'll get rid of the ball quickly. He'll move outside the pocket. I think he's going to be fine in this game. But it'll be interesting to see if the Bama run game can improve, right? They were one-dimensional against LSU. LSU, stopped the run beautifully in that game. Alabama's had issues running the ball throughout spurts of the season to this point. So, look, I've said this a million times with Alabama. If Ty Simpson goes out there and isn't really, really good to borderline great, they're not a great football team, and they can lose to anybody, especially in the SEC, if that's the case, right? They've got too many weaknesses on their team. They're not a complete enough football team where they can get away with that. But I'm expecting Ty Simpson to handle this pass rush fine. And this offensive line has improved. They got punched in the mouth against Florida State, and continuously, each and every week, they've gotten a little bit better, right? And they've stayed healthy along the offensive line there for the most part. Brailsford at center, he's playing great. Proctor looks like he's a top 10, 12 pick in the NFL draft, right? Wilkin Formby, who we thought was going to be their weak link, he's hanging in there at that right tackle spot. And then Jaden Roberts kind of has found his way back a little bit there as well. He's been solid there at that guard spot. So I think this Bama offensive line is going to be able to hang in there. I think Ty is going to be able to make quick decisions, get rid of the ball quickly, and escape the pocket, right? Nobody – that's what I talk about Mendoza. Can he throw on the run as well as Ty Simpson? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So I get why the spread is what it is, and but I would lean Alabama here with it only being 5.5. But one thing that I did not mention yet is kind of Oklahoma offensively has struggled, right? But what's been the blueprint to beat Alabama? It's with a quarterback that can move and that can run with the RPO stuff, and that is obviously something Mateer is really, really good at, and we'll see if that causes issues for Alabama. LSU tried to exploit that a little bit when Garrett Nussmeier was 18 of 21, and they benched him for a guy that could move around a little bit more. Didn't really work. But, it's a different kind of ball game there with Mateer. But the Alabama defense has gotten better each week. It was bad, obviously, last year and bad for, the beginning parts of this year. But they've gotten a little bit incrementally better, too, similar to the offensive line. So I don't have this on Best Bets of the Weekend right now, but we'll see when we do it in about 5 minutes whether I just throw Alabama in. Because 5.5, I mean, I get it. It's a bad matchup for Alabama. It's a bad matchup, but I'm expecting the quarterback to rise above and play really good in this game. Iowa and USC. The question here is simple. Is Iowa going to be able to turn it into an Iowa-style game? And if they do, they might win. And they'll probably cover if they do. I have my reservations on whether or not they are going to be able to do that. Iowa obviously made the Oregon game an Iowa-style game. What's Iowa really good at? Really good at defense, really good at special teams, field position, getting a couple of turnovers, right? They're not much there offensively. They're 21. USC is 17. Obviously, it is not at Kinnick. It is at USC. That's huge in this game. And, Iowa wants to run the football, and teams have been able to run the football a little bit against USC this year. You think about Illinois. They were able to run the ball. They won the game. Notre Dame, obviously, won the ball, ran the ball. They won the game. Michigan as well was able to run the ball, but USC obviously won that football game. So Iowa, they're not going to try to trick you. They're going to try to run the football, and we're going to find out early on if USC can stop that. And also, Iowa doesn't really give up explosives, and that's something that Lincoln Riley is always looking to do, right, with Malachi Lemon and Jacoby Lane, pushing the ball down the football field, and we'll see if they're able to pick up some explosives in this game. Because if USC can pull away, this thing could get ugly. But if Iowa can just hang in there and keep it close and bleed clock and run the football, and just make it kind of a slugfest type of game, and a game where, it's under 20 points for both teams, you got to think that Iowa's got a really good chance to win this game. But Lincoln Riley needs to win this game. Talked about it with the Michigan game. That's a game you need to win this game if you're Lincoln Riley. He won the Michigan game. You got to win this game against Iowa, right? If you want to really bring USC back to national relevance and prominence and eventually be a national national title contender there. Got to win this game. USC obviously not a national title contender this year, but this is a game you need to win to take that next step as a program. You have more talent. You're a more talented team. I would argue you have a better staff there as well, but Farron's obviously has done a tremendous job there at Iowa, and you're at home. You need to win this game. You need to win this game. We will revisit in a couple of minutes for best bets of the weekend. Florida and Ole Miss. Why are you talking about Florida Ole Miss? That's not a good game. Well, Lane Kiffin might be going up against his future team, obviously the Florida Gators. This line, I think it was like 11.5 this morning. I saw it like 15.5 earlier in the week, so that's kind of curious there. Ole Miss is ranked 7th. They just beat the Citadel. Well, congrats to them for a big-time win there against the Citadel. The question is, are the Rebels going to be distracted in this game? And Kiffin's done a nice job because the rumors have been swirling for a couple of weeks now, and Ole Miss has continued to play good football. Is that going to continue here against Florida, right? And Joel Klatt mentioned this, and, he's got a lot of good sources, so I tend to believe him here as he says this. He hears that Ole Miss is essentially going to blank check Lane Kiffin. However much you want, we'll make it happen. We want you to stay. And by the way, that is the correct decision to make if you're Ole Miss, if you're, that athletic department, the boosters, the funding to that program, the donors, right? That's the right call to make. And apparently LSU is going to do the same thing with Lane Kiffin. Basically say, blank check. Whatever you want, whatever you need, we got you. Apparently, according to Joel Klatt, Florida is not completely sold on Lane Kiffin, and they're not willing to blank check him like Ole Miss and LSU, which is noteworthy. And Klatt thinks, and I think this too, that if Kiffin were to pick, he would pick Florida over LSU and Ole Miss and Penn State, obviously, and maybe an NFL job too there as well. So if you're Kiffin and you want that Florida job and you want them to blank check you, you need to go out and dominate this game, right? You can't, just go in there and barely win or lose this game, obviously. You want to sell Florida that you can be the guy. And if you go in there, it's at home, it's not in the swamp, but if you go in there and beat the you-know-what out of Florida, they're, the people making the decisions there for the Gators are going to be like, okay, maybe we're completely sold here. So that's going to be interesting to watch here. Remember, Florida beat Ole Miss last year, and that's what ultimately kept Jackson Dart and the Rebels out of the playoffs. So there's got to be, a bit of a fire in their belly as well to get a bit of a get back here in this game. And, Florida's hung in there, right? They hung in there against Georgia, right? But, sometimes when you're in a spot where your coach is fired, you're able to really get up and play your best for the big games, right? But then the games that aren't necessarily huge, you struggle with. And what happened? They went to Kroger Field last week against Kentucky and just got smacked. And DJ Lagway got benched, I think, at halftime, right? So they're a bit of a mess. And, Ole Miss needs to win this game handily. One, for their, confidence this year, right? Because people kind of have stopped talking about them as a team this year, and all the conversation goes to Lane Kiffin, he's going to leave. This is a team that can win the national title, right? This is absolutely a team that can win a national title. So, if I'm Kiffin, I'm doing everything I can to make sure my team is focused, not distracted, and continuing to believe. And this is a game they need to win, and they should win. And, again, there's a bit of that get-back factor there as well, considering what transpired last year. Lastly, Texas and Georgia, game of the weekend. Look, Texas is lucky, flat out, to be in this position. Right? They had the 2 overtime wins against 2 of the worst teams in the SEC, Kentucky and Mississippi State. You got lucky to win both of them. And they haven't played a complete football game all year. Yeah, it's a nice win you had against Oklahoma, but you didn't play well for 60 minutes. Yeah, it was a nice win against Vandy, but you just stopped playing in the fourth quarter, right? So what evidence is there out there that Texas is going to be able to put a complete game out there? In order to beat Kirby, especially in Athens, you have to put a complete game together. So I have my reservations on whether or not that will happen. Obviously, Georgia and Texas played twice last year. They played in Austin, and they played in the SEC title game. Both times Georgia won. Both times maybe the score was close, but it just kind of, obviously it was very close to the end in the SEC title game, but it just kind of felt like it was only a matter of time before Georgia pulled away, ultimately won the game. Now, the reason why Georgia was able to have so much success against Texas last year was because the defense got after Quinn Ewers, the quarterback at the time. Both of those games really got after him, made him uncomfortable. I don't know if Georgia has that ability to do that this year. Again, this is a Georgia team that's really good, but it doesn't look like a typical Georgia team at all. Their strength is actually offense for once and not defense. So this Texas offensive line has gotten better, right? Arch was getting all the crap at the beginning of the year, but his offensive line was not good. Their offensive line has gotten incrementally better, and obviously Arch has played his best football here of late over the course of the past few weeks. They also had an off week coming into this game as well, to potentially get a little bit fresher, get a little bit healthier, and ultimately try to play their best here in this game. Both times last year, Kirby kept Texas under 20 points, right? And they sacked Ewers 13 times total in those two games, which is kind of a mind-boggling stat. Again, they're not going to be able to apply that kind of pressure here in this game. Arch Manning has to play really, really well. He has to. And I kind of expect him to, honestly. I definitely want him to. I'm an Arch guy. I got no problem admitting that. But I kind of expect him to play in this game, and I think he will. But, again, where's the evidence that they're going to be able to put this thing together for 60 minutes? Where's the evidence that they're going to be better situationally, right? They're not – people talk about Sark like he's at the top, and I like Sark. I respect Sark. He's a good coach, but he ain't Kirby Smart, right? I know for a fact that situationally when things get tight in the fourth quarter, if they do, Georgia's going to be more buttoned up. They're going to make less mistakes. They're going to be better prepared in this game. And Texas on the road has stunk this year, right? Because they have, of course, the loss against Ohio State, the loss against Florida, and then the two overtime wins that they were lucky to win against Kentucky and Mississippi State. Played horrible in those games. And typically, teams don't go into Athens and win, right? Kalen DeBoer in Alabama does, but beyond that, nobody really does that. So it's going to be a tremendous challenge for them. I thought the spread would be more of like a 7.5 than a 6.5, but Georgia favored by 6.5. I'm staying away. I'm rooting for Texas. Like I keep saying, Georgia's going to lose at some point, but I still think they're a national title team. Maybe it's this week. I'm going to be pulling for Arch to have a big game and kind of shut up some of those critics. I've got questions on whether or not they got enough pieces or enough talent and awareness situationally around him to play well enough on the road to win this game. But I'm pulling for Arch. And ultimately, when you have a game like this, the top 10 showdown in the SEC, storied programs, great head coaches, star quarterback, borderline 2 stars, right? Because Gunner Stockton's been playing well there as well. You just want it to be a good game, and ultimately that's obviously what we're hoping for. But number 10, Texas. Number 5, Georgia, 7:30 on Saturday. Should be a good one.